without the power of God behind everything I do, I really am completely inadequate.
I'm helping the culture. These guys are part of us as well. You know, these guys are our cousin. I'm helping the culture. I'm pushing the culture forward in another way.
Hey, black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow.
What do you do after you read? What do you do after you know all, right? And you can say that you're truly conscious. How are you putting what you know into action?
That wasn't very loud, the applause. I don't know what happened with it, but we're here. Hey, y'all. This is the New Black History Maker Show. I'm your host, Jasmine Gates, and we are at the Good News Network. Excited to have Koree YANCY back.
Hey, everybody.
Yes. So,
I'm back.
Yeah, she was here after my trip, our trip, when we went to South America and visited all these amazing countries.
Awesome.
And now she's back.
I'm back.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Today's episode, if you are listening on YouTube or Facebook, you can see the title. It is Faith and Fitness. Koree started your fitness journey, well, your faith journey way back, but your fitness journey. I don't really. Well, would you say you started your fitness journey this year or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
February.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's when she started, and now it's October, and you're still going strong.
Yeah, we're out here getting these gains, girl.
Right. So yeah, that's good. So we're going to talk a little bit. Well, not a little bit. The whole episode is going to be on that faith and fitness tip. So yeah, if you are new to the show, follow us on Instagram, New Black History Makers. Go get some merch at the mall, Fox Hills Mall, Uplifters Marketplace. We're there. Unloved LA on Melrose, we are there as well, or newblackhistorymakers.com. We just did a sale. Everything was 50% off. So if you missed it, you missed it. But Black Friday is coming up, and we're of course doing a sale for that. And then we're about to just launch all of the new merch so that you guys can be dripped out for the holidays and get people some really nice gifts and stuff. So that is that. But Koree, how are you?
You know what? I'm doing well.
Okay.
I'm doing really well.
That's good.
It's been a good week for me. It's been a good week. I feel like for the last month, I've just been so busy having a lot going on.
Mm.
And this is the first week where I just feel very balanced.
Mm.
I've been able to get rest, but then still be productive. It's been a good week.
Yeah. I think the balance, I'm in a interesting season and it's not really even interesting. It's just, there's a lot going on. It's not busy and all over the place, but I'm busy with a very structured schedule. So just trying to fit things in. And then I haven't really mentioned it on the show, but if you follow me, you know that I'm doing this 6-week challenge. Koree was the one that introduced me to it. So, I'm eating every 3 hours, and that has to be planned out. My schedule has to be planned out, because if I don't have a meal, I'm really not trying to eat out. I probably have only eaten out maybe 2 or 3 times.
Wow, that's great.
And this is week 4. So just been really intentional, and it's been making me be very intentional with my time and where I'm spending my time at. So that means that it's forcing me to have a schedule, so it's okay, I'm packing my schedule out. But it's busy, but it's more intentional busy and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's feels like a more mature season, it's okay, well, I have times and stuff. It's no, I need to be home by this time because I need to eat my food because I can't eat nothing else. And packing lunches and all of that. I've been going to bed early because that's something that they want you to do for the challenge. So, and then just eating better, that's a mature decision too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, going on week 4 of eating nothing but chicken and shrimp and tuna. I guess it's a lot. It's not that bad. It's really not that bad.
You're doing you're doing great. I know people who are really struggling. So every time I see you and the statements that you make, man, I don't know if I'm going to go back to eating this other way, or, you can just see how some people really take it and allow it to transform their lives, and other people are like, I'm just trying to lose some weight.
Right.
You know, so I love to see how it's really
Thank
becoming
you.
a lifestyle for
Yeah,
you.
because I'm like, how was I eating like this before? Like eating crazy.
I saw those
you know?
nachos, girl.
Yeah. Like, I could not eat, eating portioned out or whatever. And it's like, I mean, just for context, I know y'all didn't ask this, but every meal is 4 ounces of protein, 2 ounces of carbs, and a veggie. And then you like alternate that with a meal and then a protein and then a meal or whatever. But like the protein, it's a lot of protein. Because at first I was like, 4 ounces of protein is not gonna be enough. And when the first time I measured it, I'm like, oh, this is a lot. This is more than I know, because I'm not really a meat eater.
Right.
So it was like more than I would typically just eat on a normal. So I'm like, it's a pretty hearty, yeah, like it's a pretty cool. So, and I'm like, and then going to restaurants. So like going to the 2 or 3 times that I did, and having to like eye it, and I'm like, this is too much food. And I would have just sat there and ate the whole thing. Like just ate and bread and dessert.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
Definitely.
no, I cannot go back to eating like this.
Yeah, it'll change your life.
Yeah. So, and then I really wanted to lose the weight. I was looking in the mirror like, who in the world is this? So that was like another driving factor. But then also just the possibilities of like cooking and stuff. And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a lot. But just context on like why I said I feel like I've just been in this season of like really being intentional with my scheduling and all that. But yeah. Okay, so the random question. I don't remember what I asked you last time, but let's do this one. I think I asked this one last week too. But if you could name this season of your life, a phrase, a sentence, or a word, what would you say?
I would say ooh, there's a few. Okay. I don't want to take too much time.
No, you're
I
good.
would say faithful and just stepping out. Like there are a lot of things that God has been putting on my heart for years that I've always come up with a reason, not to execute, or a reason why I can't do it, or, just full of excuses. Because if you're looking for an excuse, you'll find one, right?
No, for sure.
And I always have a reason why I don't do the thing that I know God has asked me to do. And I think that it's even like, so just for a little background, like I am in ministry. And so you can cover up a lot of what God has specifically asked you to do with ministry work. Right.
Yeah,
so for me, I'm like, oh, I'm serving, I'm ministering, I'm teaching, and like all of these things are good. But at the end of the day, God's like, but what did I ask you to do?
Yeah.
And so in this season, I have definitely stepped out on things that I know God has put in my heart years ago. And so I'm very, very proud of my obedience in those areas. And I've been faithful. Like I can honestly say that, and not like in a boastful way, but like, wow, when I look back at just even through the whole year, so not even this particular season, but like I've been faithful. And so I see how that faithfulness has brought me to this place of just this obedience and being able to take action. And it just feels so good.
Yeah, that's good. We got to get into the faithfulness part.
Yeah.
Later in like what it does for you, and then all of it, like just the transformation of it and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you just one more because like I said, I asked that one last week for the guest. What surprised you this week?
What surprised me? I'm not gonna tell y'all what really surprised me this week. I was having some issues this week. I was having some health issues this week. Okay. So I surprised myself. I have not been to the gym, but something that surprised me this week.
Well, I guess you should just tell us what you weren't going to tell us.
You know what? I'll say this. I'll say so. And of course, we'll get into it later. But like, I have been a very consistent gym goer for the last few months or so. And because I've been having some issues, I had to take this week off. But I'm like surprised at how my life has been transformed by this whole thing, honestly. And so so very specifically what I mean is just how even though I couldn't go to the gym this week, how I was still like, well, I have to do something. Like there's just this desire, right? To just keep going and doing, even if it's not, me going to the gym for 45 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, I know I can do some sit-ups right now. Or like, let me do some crunches while I'm here. But I never thought I'd be that person. So I think that even me had like not being able to go to the gym, but still seeing like the impact of my lifestyle change has surprised me. Yeah, for sure.
Because even on the trip you had mentioned, I think towards the end, because we weren't working out that much. I mean, you would go and do like something, like how you said, like, let me just make sure I'm doing something. But at the end, you're like, wow, it's good to see that the deposits that you've made are real deposits and they're long lasting. Because we were gone for 18 days. So you can imagine if someone was kind of being like flaky with their workouts, they would have seen at the end of the 18 days, like maybe some weight gain or something there. But you were like, no, my body has kind of like maintained through this trip, even though we were kind of not able to, like, you weren't able to do what you had been doing.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. Man. Faith and fitness, girl. Change your life.
Yes.
Change your life.
Yeah, for sure. So, I know you were on before, but let's just get into a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Koree. I am from LA. I am in ministry, like I mentioned. So I'm actually on the pastoral staff at my church, my local church. And I am a Bible teacher. I love teaching people the word of God and getting them to a level of being able to understand what the scriptures actually mean. And how they can truly transform your life. And I am also an entrepreneur, but we're not here to talk about that. But I'm really excited about some projects that I'm working on. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I do. But is there anything else you want to know? Should I share?
I mean, anything. You have Women's Connection.
Oh yeah. So ministry for me is really who I am. So it's in everything that I do. So like I mentioned, I am on the pastoral staff in my church. But even in addition to that, my mom and I do a lot of ministry together. So we hold what we call a Women's Connection every first Saturday of every month. We just made a year, and so it's very exciting.
I was looking for the button. I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yes. So that's really exciting. Again, it's just one of those things that we stepped out on faith and we started, and God has been so faithful.
Yeah.
Women's lives have been transformed. We've been able to build such a unique community, authentic community, vulnerable community. So it's just been very, very fulfilling. I just wrapped up a 6-week Bible study series that I was holding in my backyard, which was really, really great. And that's part of that faithfulness that I mentioned earlier. And that's stepping out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, God is he's really moving in my life. And so when I say ministry, I'm not just talking about the walls of the church, I'm talking about just the overflow of kind of who I am in all that I do is from that heart of ministry. So
yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I've been able to attend quite a few different things.
You've been rocking with us.
Yeah, I've been going. So they're, just good things. And I think for me, there was one time, and I think I mentioned it to you briefly. I know I mentioned it to your mom. But I had went to something for my church. Y'all know I'm Kojic. So I had went early on a Saturday to something for my church. And, there's of course the target audience is for like the older women, women that are older than us. So they were talking about like mental health resources for their age group or whatever. So I had went there and heard that. And then I had went to your church for the event that your mom had put on. And you were on the panel, and there was, this church that's a part of another denomination, right? You're on the whole opposite side of, the city essentially, or the whatever. What am I trying to say? Because Not the
No.
spectrum. No, not this. It's not the city, and it's not the other side of the county. But you on the other side, basically. Because
That's
I was in Long Beach.
Yeah, the other
and
side
then
of
you're in
town.
Mincy. Other side of town is what I was trying to say. I couldn't get the word. But to go over there, like I said, different denomination, different group of people, and you guys were talking about it was mental health, and there was a lot of other conversations and stuff too. And that day, I was like, there's so many people who, you know, say that the church isn't changing or the church isn't evolving, right? But in that day, I was able to experience the evolution because years ago we weren't talking about those things, you know. So it's been cool for me to be able to experience things on your side or your world as it relates to church, because it just like not that it pairs well, but it's like, no, people are doing the work.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's definitely like
Absolutely.
a light, and it's encouraging just to be able to be like, okay, yeah, it's not just happening over here.
Yeah.
It's not just happening over there. So
And I love that. I love that about God, though. Like, you know, he has just the most unique ways of changing the hearts of people and starting up these conversations, you know, because I know, Jazz, you and I have had plenty of conversations about this, you know, the quote old church and then you have the quote new church and, you know, but it's just like we need each other. And and when I talk to people that are, you know, quote new church, I'm like, but you don't know how God's changing the hearts of people in the old church too, you know, like we don't always get it right, the old and the new, you know, but we need each other nonetheless. And so I love that you mentioned that because it's true. It's for me, it's just reflective of what God is doing in the church and in the lives of people. And it's just beautiful to see.
yeah, and just to keep an open mind for sure. So that's cool. But if you are local, every first Saturday, definitely come.
Yes, we
Pop
would
up on
love to have
Koree.
you.
Yeah. So that's it. I'm like sitting here thinking, like, okay, so do we tap in to the faith part first, or do we tap into the fitness part first? But I think I want to go into, well, yeah, let's talk about the faith part first because I think that is first. So, like, just and I feel like I'm asking these questions and I know the answers to them. So I'm trying to be mindful of like, okay, even though I know the answers, let me still ask the questions because people don't know stuff for the context. So, just like entry into, maybe like, I was going to say giving God a real yes. I feel like that's a very churchy, like, statement. When did you give God a real yes? But like when you really decided, like, okay, I'm going to live this life the way that, you know, it's intended. So not, you know, you know, like I would say I was born and raised in church, but when I really decided it was like much later. So let's go with like that part when was like, okay, Koree was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to make an adult decision to like follow God.
We're doing this.
Yeah.
So I started seeking God in 2015, I'll say.
Okay.
That's like when I started really, really, like I had questions and I'm like, God, if you're real, I know you're capable of answering them. So I started what we call in the Christian faith a process of deconstruction. And we'll basically unpack your faith, right? Like what does it really say? What does this really mean? You know, why are things the way they are? And so you start to unpack all of these big questions that people have, the problem with evil, you know, morality and eternity. And you start to unpack all of these things. And so I was on that journey, but man, like looking back, it's crazy because like God was really working, but I was like so fallen. Like, I think some of the darkest seasons of my life happened after I started pursuing Jesus. And I got baptized in 2017 because I was like, all right, like, I want the world to see, you know, like and I was terrified to get baptized. I may have shared this with you, Jazz, but I remember going in that morning and they're like, you know, telling us about baptism and the importance of water baptism. And they're like, does anybody have any questions? And everyone's just standing there like, no, they're just changing their clothes. And I'm like, I have a question. Is anybody else terrified? And they're like, everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy, right? And they're like, what are you afraid of? And I'm like, this is a big deal. Like, at least for me it is, right? And I so badly just wanted to represent Christ well that I was so afraid to fall. Right. And like, obviously you kind of like mature in your faith and you realize like we all fall, right? Like no one's perfect. Right. But I so badly did not want to be a hypocritical Christian. I was like, I do not want to be that person that is getting baptized today, but then next week I'm like girl, we just saw you on Instagram. We thought you were, we thought you went under the water.
Right.
Like,
Well,
you're
not
supposed to be
under
a
the
new,
water.
you're supposed to be new in Christ. Like,
Right.
you're acting real old.
Right.
Right. So I got baptized in 2017, but again, some of the darkest seasons of my life happened right after. So it was just this reminder of like, this is really a journey. It wasn't until 2019, if I'm 100% honest. And mind you, I had been serving in the church and, just trying to get it right and really trying to live for Christ. But like a lot of people, it's just like you so badly want to live for him, but
Yeah.
you're just being pulled into the world. You're not ready to fully let go, So it was December 26, 2019. It was the day after Christmas. I was sitting on my bed and the Holy Spirit said, you need to make up your mind. Right? Like it's either a yes or a no, but this fence thing, this sometimes, this today but tomorrow thing, this lukewarm thing as we call it, it's not going to get you there. And so it was that moment where I was like, okay, Lord, I'm all in. And so it was the end of 2019 where I officially was like, okay, Lord, whatever you have, I'm here for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I think because like, okay, I know you grew up in the church too, and then I did as well. So people often have looked at me because I had more knowledge of the religion and I knew what it looked like to practice the religion, or because I've always prayed or I've always had Christian aspects to my language or my speech, right? So people can look at us and just be like, oh, well, you must have always been living for God, right? Like people have always just put that on me. And I'm like, I was out here wilding.
Right.
Still going to church on Sunday. And it's funny because they would say that. And I remember one Sunday, you know how they'll be like, oh, you was in the club on a Saturday, but coming to church on Sunday. So growing up, I would always hear them saying that. And I'm like, it just never resonated until one day I was that person.
Yeah.
That was like turned up until 2 or 3 in the morning and like still had to get up to go. And not even had to, I just wanted to go to church. So I just got up the next day. And I remember sitting in church like, dang, I've become that person that they used to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a difference in saying like, yes, I want to really like live this life for God, and just having this like form of religion, which those of us that grew up in the church can exhibit so well.
Absolutely.
Like you could have asked me to pray for, anything, and I would, and most people did. Like, oh, Jazz, can you pray for this? Can you do this? And it's like, yeah, of course. I'm gonna turn up with you, but
I have no idea how far you are.
Yeah, but because it looks a certain way, or because maybe a lot of people weren't raised the way we were, it looks like, oh, okay, they must be right with God.
Right.
And that's what we're kind of talking about, the difference. That's why I wanted to kind of point out, like, okay, when was the actual, like, because, and then life is different, when you go from that, like, just, oh, okay, I'm riding on the prayers of my grandparents. Yeah, like
on the coattails
those
of the
prayers.
saints.
And then you start to get into a space where you're now living off of the relationship that you have with God.
Yeah.
And it's now banking on like who you are and what you're doing. So
that's a really big realization, I think, because I think that most people think that they're going to be saved because their parents are, because their grandparents are, and it's like, okay, well, their prayers matter and their prayers will continue to reel you in, hopefully, but ultimately, like, you're responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's so many people out here. That's why I'm always like, there's so much work to do.
So much.
Is people don't really understand that they have to make up their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to go on a break. But we're going to definitely come back and talk about just that a little bit more on that aspect. I do want to talk about the faithfulness part. And then, of course, we're going to get into the fitness and how these things intertwine. But we'll be on a 3-minute break. So send this to somebody and we'll be back.
Yes.
Get myself together. All right, we are back. This is New Black History Makers Show. I'm your host, Jasmine. Y'all know this, it's fall, so I'm about to start getting my hair pressed. And I'm like excited about that so that when I come in here, I can just put the earphones over. But yeah, New Black History Maker Show. I'm your host, Jasmine Gates, the Good News Network. We're here with the home team. I am here with Koree. We are talking about faith and fitness.
Yes.
Before we went off, we were just kind of talking about just relationships with God and how things can be different, or how there's a difference between kind of just being raised in the church and then deciding, like, literally, I mean, in a very simple form, it's being raised in the church and doing church because your parents raised you that way, and then deciding, like, this is the religion that I want to live in a very, like, simple way. That's how I would, describe it. So yeah, I know for me, I guess around 2019, 2020, for me, like, I was inching towards, like, all right, yeah, I'm about to do this, God thing or whatever. I was in a relationship, got out the relationship, because the man didn't have a relationship with God. And I was just like, I can't do this. And I mean, but a good man, most women would have probably, and women that I did know did look at me in a way like, how did you let him go? And just for context, like, we traveled the world together. We probably in the 2.5 years had hit like 16 different countries. He had put me on to a lot. So on paper, he was a good man.
Girl.
But I remember going through some things because my grandfather had a church at the time and he had sold it like before the pandemic. And I remember feeling a way about that, and not necessarily feeling like separation anxiety, kind of, because he was getting ready to sell the church. And that was my home. I grew up there, and it was also a spiritual element because there was a lot of just different things going on there. And I remember not being able to tell him, and I didn't even try to. I remember me going home and thinking, like, I'm not even about to call him because I can't even explain to him this spiritual aspect and why the things that are happening are wrong. Like, it just wasn't right. And I remember feeling like I'm suppressing a big part of myself in this relationship. And the fact that I can't talk to him about this specific thing, or like the God things that are happening in my life. I was just like, I can't do this. Like, this doesn't feel right. Like, who am I supposed to talk to? And then, I'm always like thinking ahead. I'm like, that's what opens doors when you're in relationships and you feel like you can't talk to your partner. That opens doors for you to now start talking to other people. So if there was a man that did get it, then I would go and talk to him about it, and now that defiles my relationship. So I was just like, no, I can't do this. It took some time, but the pandemic ended up happening. And I remember I would like go, I think I told you, I would go to like just go on drives because we couldn't do anything. They were like, stay away from people, stay in the house. So I would go up to like in the hills, like near Hollywood and stuff. I think I'm not even gonna try to say it, but up in the hills near Hollywood, and just drive for hours. I would get food and maybe park like out of view, or I would go drive along the coast and I would go get food and just do whatever and sit out there for hours because you couldn't do anything. And that's when I started listening to Maverick City. So early 2020, I started listening to Maverick City, and I played out, I think it's like volume 3, The Man of Your Word, that album. I played that album out, just played it out. And it sent me into this like real place of worship, like for months. I think I didn't listen to anything but like Christian and gospel music, mainly Maverick City, for probably about like 10 months. And it was just 1 month I looked up and I was like, I haven't even listened to anything else. Like, I literally would just get in the car and that would be my my playlist. And in that time I ended up breaking up, with my now ex, of course. And it was tough. And I remember just having a conversation with God and being like, I cannot sit up here and cry about this man. Like, I did this to be more in alignment with your will. So you have to take care of these emotions.
Yeah, I remember you sharing.
And he did that. And I remember there was like one time where I was like about to start, like really just start crying. And I was like, yo, we had a conversation about this. Like,
Yo, God.
I can't.
You said if I left him, you take care of
like,
this.
Yeah. And I remember feeling like, and I don't know if it was like me laughing at my audacity or me just like, or God just being like, all right, let me, help her. But either way, it was taken care of. So that was like my moment. And that's when I knew I was for real, because like I said, I even couldn't tell my friends that I broke up with him, because when I was initiating a breakup before, they were so anti, because he was such a good man.
Such a good man now.
Like such a good man. So it was just like, why would you do that? Like, I'm single. I remember one of his friends like almost went off on me. We had a mutual friend, and he was just like, I've never loved a woman the way he's loved you. I ain't never took a woman around the country. I never did this. And I'm just sitting there like, and it made me want to go back, because I was like, wow, how dare I let this love go away? And I remember when I was like, no, I made that decision. I didn't tell too many people. I only told like trusted individuals. And I didn't tell people until like it was 3 months later. And I was like, we can't do nothing about it.
Right.
I remember me being like, yeah, if I did that, because as women, we're so fixated on like, you have to find the right one. Like why would you let a good one go? Even if he doesn't have everything. Like, so I was just like, all right, I think me and God rocking real tough right now, because I ain't got nothing else, to bank on. So that in 2020 for me was when I knew like, oh yeah, you really rocking with him, because, what if you don't find another man like that, or whatever. Like, it was just, I would rather not suppress my spirit, or my religion, not my faith with God. I didn't want to suppress that or stunt that growth. I just couldn't let that happen. I was like, there's just better out there. But
well, I know how you feel. So I can absolutely attest to that. And that, like you said, that is a sign that it's getting real.
Yeah.
Because you can do it up until a certain point. Like, oh, it's not a huge deal. Like, he's a good man. Good people go to heaven, right? Anyways, different topic. But he's good enough.
Yeah.
Like, he's good. Like, he doesn't have to be, serving in the church and pastor. Like, he's a good man and he loves me. I don't care if he goes to church on Sunday. Not really my concern, right? But as you continue to grow and mature in your relationship with God, he starts to change you.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. You do get to a place where you're like, wow, I want to be able to have these conversations with the person that I love. But there's something like I just can't.
Yeah.
There, and so it's absolutely a hindrance. And I remember being in a relationship once, and I was having like a really tough time, and I was just like crying and crying. And he's a man, he's a good man, so he's like trying to solve my problems. A good man, girl.
Right.
But he's like trying to solve my problems. And I just and I love that about him. But there's something that happens in the spirit when you're dating someone who understands, because all I wanted, but I couldn't even communicate it, but all I wanted was for him to pray with me. Like, I just wanted him to hold me and pray for me. But it was something that would be so foreign if I asked, that I never even had the courage to do it. But yeah, when you start to grow and mature in your faith, it changes you.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where like you can't fake it.
Yeah.
Like I can't even act like there's not a bigger thing at work right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that you try, like you said, you tried for a long time before you actually decided to make that decision.
Right.
And I can definitely relate to that. It's like, I'm trying, but there's just something that is
that's not at work here.
That's not working in our favor.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because I remember having a conversation about like just the fact that when you really start to change and you really like, because sometimes, I mean, a lot of times the yes, or you deciding like to make this the way that you're going to live your life and deciding like, okay, it's not just a thing that my parents taught me. It's a very like private thing that the yes is private.
Right.
It's not something that you're like on Instagram, like, hey y'all, today I'm deciding to walk with God more than I was before. It's like, okay, now I realize that this is for real for me. And it's a very private thing. And I was telling someone like, because I had given God that yes, and I had, with the relationship and my life was beginning to change. And then I went into that season of like just heavy worship or whatever. I was in it, but people were experiencing the difference in me. And I was like, of course, you know, maybe, of course, there has to be some change, but you can't see yourself. And people were starting to say things about me or like, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. And I'm like, no, like I'm the same person, but in actuality, I wasn't.
Absolutely.
You know, so something like even recently, somebody was like, just somebody that just didn't know me. They were just asking questions. They asked about my parents, and I was like, oh yeah, they're ministers, whatever. They were like, oh, are you in ministry? And I was like, nah, I'm not, you know, I'm not getting into that. And I sat there and I'm like, girl, yeah, you
totally are.
And I was just sitting there like, that's such a natural response. And I think we go back to the old church and the new church because I have such a, and the deconstruction of it, I have not a negative feeling, but there are some negative or not so positive feelings about what ministry looked like when I was growing up.
Yes.
So I'm always like, no, I don't do it like that.
Yes.
Like it's
you want to be
different for me.
clear. Yeah.
And I couldn't like explain that in that moment. And I know that person was going to be like, I didn't ask for all that, but I'm like, I am in ministry, but it doesn't look like, you know, what you may have
not
been
the way you
used to.
think I am.
I'm like, I try to do things a little different. But it was just funny because I naturally just said, no, that's not it. And it was like, no, you are, but there's, you know, I want you to understand that it's not like what you may have experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's an interesting thing, but people can feel that. And that's what I was like bringing up. Like they can feel the change, even if you're just like living in it day to day and you can't see yourself, but they can feel like,
oh, I know
that you're changing.
People felt my change before I even like really, like you said, realized. I just stopped getting invited to stuff. I was like, what you mean I can't go to happy hour? Well, we know you're on your journey, you know, and I'm like,
we know you're on your journey.
I'm like, this is what we do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can still go and not drink. Like, I don't have to have like rounds to have a good time. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was so funny because, like slowly people stopped inviting me places. And slowly I started to get certain types of phone calls. You know, it was like, oh, I don't know the tea anymore, but I know the pain. You know, so I'm like, I started to kind of understand my role, or I guess my new role, and had to kind of reposition myself and my expectations because people were certainly treating me different.
Okay. Now let's get into this. So I was recently, I'm in full transparency, getting ready to go back into therapy, and I had to fill out a questionnaire form. And on it, there was a list of things, and they were like, check all that apply. There, and it was a bunch of, it was like anxiety, depression, like what you've experienced or whatever, like headaches or whatever. And then it said isolation. And I checked yes, because I feel like I intentionally, and not even intentionally, I intentionally isolate, or I'm okay with isolation now because of that part right there where like people start to, oh, we can't hang out anymore, we can't do this, and then you start to hear people's pain. And when you start to hear people's pain and knowing that there's a calling on your life and there's a prayer or God is calling you to speak to that or to pray for that, you can't interact with that person the same sometimes.
Oh no.
So you have to isolate from certain people and figure out where you can have your safe spaces. So for me, I was like in a bind looking at this this questionnaire, like, okay, they're putting isolation on here as a negative thing, but it's very much so something that I enter into intentionally.
Absolutely. And I can relate to that. That was one of, for me, there are variations of darkness in my life. Like I've gone through some very serious depressions, suicide, all that. Like, but then I've also had very, very tough, just like emotionally heavy seasons. And so I remember going through just this season of separation from people. Like, again, like I said, I wasn't getting invited anymore. I didn't know the tea anymore. No one was calling me to gossip, you know, which these are great things because I don't want to be a part of things that aren't edifying, but it's hard because I was essentially saying goodbye to the life that I knew. And the type of friendships that I had would now shift, right? And I remember just being in such an emotional, like I said, heavy place and for months. And I remember reading I was reading Genesis and God's promise to Abraham, and one thing that stood out to me in this scripture, this is Genesis 12 for anyone interested. But one thing that was stood out to me in the Holy Spirit as I was reading the story, I kid you not, the Holy Spirit told me, you have to leave people to lead people.
Mm.
And that was just the thing that I held on to.
Yeah.
Like, there's purpose in this, and there's intention with the separation,
Yeah.
you know, and it allowed me to be able to process it differently, because I'm not separating you to take you on this like weird journey and you're doing weird things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm separating you to elevate you.
Yeah.
Like, people don't no longer, they don't see you the way you used to be now you walk in more authority.
Yeah.
Now what you say matters
Yeah.
more, it holds more weight. So there was this whole transformation that took place. But I agree with you, isolation can very, very well be a good thing.
Yeah.
If it's intentional, if it has the right intention behind it.
Because there's definitely people that are isolating for maybe, and I don't want to say negative reasons, but trying to run away from things, or on the negative side. And I think maybe that's why it was on the thing. But for me, it was just like, even understanding the power that I carry, right?
Absolutely.
Like walking in that, and then also like, and it's interesting because my pastor has been preaching on this, like not tainting your witness, and being mindful of like compromising your witness in front of people.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, sometimes you have to isolate, and it's not because I'm gonna go I'm gonna go and do battle by myself, but it's just like, okay, I can't always be in front of y'all. Like I can't always be around y'all because you don't believe what I believe in. So that means that I have to be a light. And not that I'm walking in like, oh, let me tell y'all about God today, right? But it's like, whenever you see me, I want it to be a reflection of like, yeah, even if it's like, yeah, here go Jazz doing that God thing again, or Jazz is like here, and living a life. Like, I want that to be it. I don't want it to be, well, Jazz she be doing this a little bit on the side too sometimes.
But you didn't know she's still, but
yeah.
And you know what? Actually, to that point, like, I know people who it's just so important to have a healthy community. And I've always shared this with you about like why OTH, Over the Hump. For those of you who don't know, Jazz has talked about them, I'm sure, plenty of times.
And
so your listeners know
Yeah.
OTH, and they've been on. But like, why OTH, the impact that the community has had on me, because it's very hard to find believing friends, especially if you are in ministry. As I've always felt like I have to be your leader. I have to be your example. I have to be the one to lead you to Christ eventually. I can't be straight away, you know what I'm saying? But so to be, to have, like you and Amber and even Jasmine over there.
Yeah, shout out to Jasmine.
Yeah, shout out my
in-studio audience. Yeah, I'm so sorry I didn't even shout you out before.
But like, people who believe, where I don't feel like I'm like, these are my friends. I don't feel like they get it, right? We're like walking together. They understand that I'm not perfect, but I'm also not trying to lead them to Christ. And we can like really just like be in community together. It's so important, because I know, like, I've been around people who are, I'm not going to say church people at all. But just people who have told me like, oh, well, him or her or whoever it is, like, oh, you think they this, but I seen them last week doing this. And I'm like, what? Don't tell, like, that's not edifying, But there's so many people waiting for you to fall. They're waiting for you to slip up. They're waiting for you to drink too much so they can have a story to tell about you and your witness. And when we say witness, we mean
like your life,
right? Like, protect your witness, protect how you are viewed by the world, right? And so there's so many people waiting to watch you fall, and it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's waiting. And for me, I've seen it on the other side. Y'all have heard me talk about my family and the dynamics of it and how many preachers are in my family. So I've seen, my blood do right by the church, and I've seen my blood do wrong by the church. So I'm always understanding when people are like, oh, the church is this, the church is that. And I'm like, yeah, I can see it because it's reflected in my family. So I'm like, I definitely get it. And that's why there's such a burden on me to make sure, like, okay, I'm not on that other side. you know, where it's like, yes, there are people that want you to fall, but I also want, you know, and you were explaining it, and I usually explain it as like being 10 toes down. You know, like if you are 10 toes down about what you believe in, regardless of what 10 toes down about the marathon, about your faith, about Jesus, about whatever it is that you believe in, be consistent in it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just respect from people. And that was something even for me, like I would not get in front of people or operate in a ministry. And I've had countless opportunities before I really got 10 toes down. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be the person that's like, oh, I don't want to give anybody that opportunity to be able to say that about me.
Yeah.
You know, and then also I care about the people that would receive from me. And I don't want to give to them from a cup that's like defiled.
Yeah.
So that's been my thing. And I mean, clearly a lot of people don't have that, because there are a lot of leaders who are constantly falling short and are not being intentional. And that's not to say like leaders have to be perfect, right? But there's some of them that are, you know, they hold on to that grace card a little too hard. And we acknowledge that, you know, we acknowledge that. And I also want to do, there is grace for people who are struggling. But there's a difference between I'm actively going to keep doing this because it's in the dark and I'm struggling with something and I'm seeking out help and I'm falling short. So, you know, there's that, but I don't want to be on the side of, God said his grace is sufficient for me, so I'm going to ride that wave out
Listen,
too. I can't ride.
Going back to my baptism, that was my fear. I was like, no way, I will not be a hypocritical Christian. I am not about to, I'm not just going to just chill in this grace. Like, I want to be serious about this. Like, if I fall, but I'm getting back up.
Right.
You know, but I'm not just going to be like, yeah, okay, this is cool. I can do whatever I want.
And I get you saying, is anyone else terrified?
Girl.
Because even now in this season, like I don't know if it's terrified to fall short, but I'm like, I am, if that's the line, I'm not going over that line. Like I've come too far and given a yes. And my life, like, I think sometimes people look at it as like, oh, these are things that you have to do. And it's like, no, I do these things so that I can live a life that's here, that's healthy and like more free. And once I've experienced that, I'm like, I can't go back to living a life that's a little more confused, where I don't know what's happening or I'm not really trusting in God because I'm just moving on my own.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I feel like it's tough, you know, like and I know I shared this when we were on the trip, but I have very much created a life that is centered around Jesus. Like everything I do, everything, you know, like where I go, what I participate in, like I stay so far away from sin as I can because I'm afraid to fall. But the reality is that I do that because I'm very, very aware of my humanity, you know? And so that's when we're talking about grace, like that's what it really is about. Because for me, I'm like, I know how quick I can fall, you know, and in every single time I think that I can't, I do, you know what I mean? And so I don't know. I guess I share that because I know you and I are both very mature in our faith, and we're in, but I want people to know that you're not always going to get it right, and you are going to fall, you know? And it's going to hurt, and you're going to have to go through the process, and there's going to be consequences. But that is when we say God's grace is sufficient for you, because you don't stay there. You just say, you know, Lord, I need your forgiveness, and you keep trying. But it's definitely been a process, and like, I just feel like I just came out of like a very like tough, like I really was dealing with something, you know, and I had to get back right, you know, and it just, things just happen so fast, and the enemy is just he's deceiving, you know. He knows what your weaknesses are. And I think about that, I'm like, yo, look, this guy has been here since the beginning of time. This is what he's been doing, since the beginning of eternity. He knows you better than you know yourself. And so I feel you, girl.
And it's a thing of being like humble too, or not that it has to be, but it does humble you. And I think I was talking about it with somebody, but just like getting into this aspect of, you know, like you said, we're mature in our faith, but like the more I know about God, I'm like, it's like the more I like more amazed and like, wow, there's so much that I don't know.
Huh.
You know, there's so much,
Yeah.
and there's so much that I can't do. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just like even going through like the ups and downs, I be looking at people like, or just seeing people post, and I'm like, y'all really just need God, like, and not in a, like a judgmental way, but I'm like, because people be struggling, and I'm
Yeah.
like, the only way that I'm able to make it through, and even this year, I'm like, I've went through some tough things this year. Like I was on chemotherapy, I was like at the worst with my arthritis, and I'm like, but to make it to this side, you know, and to not, and then like I talk about it not all the time, but enough on like my posts, like them telling me to be mindful of depression, anxiety behind, not even with life, but just behind my arthritis. They were just like, you need to be mindful of that. Going through all of that, I'm like, I know what it feels like for there to be a possibility of something to take over your mind, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
like me having God stop that possibility.
Mm.
And that's why I'm just like, okay, y'all be going through stuff, but like you really need to just tap into God, and not even like in the to-do list of things, like literally in your alone time, like you need to figure out who God
Absolutely.
is and find that like relationship. Cause I'm like, I don't thinking about this year, I'm like, it was so many downs this year, like so many, and I don't look at it that way. But when I look back, I'm like, there were.
Yeah.
But I literally pressed into God into those times, and it didn't feel like that. But if I write it down on paper, what the beginning of this year looked like, it's like,
Crazy.
oh, the like January, February, and March was like rough. And it's just like, okay. But I pressed into God a lot, like even in maybe being sad or going through like just low moments, I was putting on worship music.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
different from me sitting in isolation trying to figure it out for myself.
Right.
You know,
right.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a real thing. I'm like, people have to definitely
They do.
get into that.
I think that one of the beauties to me and what I'm learning in like my in just being it
And being human.
yeah, but I was gonna say in my humility really
Being
is
human,
just the like it- the beauty of your fall, right? Is that it reveals your deficiencies. And so you're able to re-examine yourself and your weaknesses in areas where you do need to heal.
Yeah.
It shows your brokenness.
Yeah.
And I'm a person that's always in pursuit of wholeness. So I'm like, Lord, show me, because I want to be whole. I want to be the best version of myself, right? So I think that also that's important, that we don't just go through stuff, but that we re-examine what brought us to those places.
Yeah.
We can reposition and we can get healing from it too.
Right.
God is glorified in all of it.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna go on break real quick. We'll be back for our last segment. But we'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, y'all.
Yay! Can you hear me okay and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we are back. New Black History Makers show. I'm your host, Jasmine Gates. We're at the Good News Network, the home team with Koree and YANCY.
Whoop whoop.
Yeah, so if you are listening in the middle of the week, or whenever the replay is playing, definitely come back. We are live every Friday at 3:30 p.m.
Yes.
Pacific Standard Time or Pacific Time, whatever, however you're supposed to say that. But yeah, we're here. Today we're talking about faith and fitness. We've been talking about faith the whole time. So let's get into the fitness part a little bit, because you said February is when you started your journey.
Yes, my consistent journey.
Your consistent journey.
But yes, emphasis on consistent.
Yes.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. So I guess I'll start with saying that I think everybody can say that they probably have like a glimpse of the person they want to become.
Yeah.
Right? Like we all kind of have this idea of who we want to be.
Yeah.
And for years, y'all, for years, I literally had the same fitness goals on my wall in my room, probably since 2013. And there were goals. And so like I would start and I would stop. I'd go consistently for like a week or like a couple days a week for like a month. And you think like you're making progress, or maybe you go a month or two, right? And so I had glimpses of this girl. So I knew I was capable of eventually becoming her, but I knew that I had to do something to become her, right? Like you don't just become the person you want to become overnight.
No, for sure.
Right? Like you have to practice it. It takes discipline. You have to become the person. And so this year in February, once again, I had my New Year's resolutions in January. That did not work out for me. It did not work out. But I don't even remember, to be honest, what happened in February. I just knew that I was tired of saying next summer. I was tired of just not being happy with my body when I was physically capable of doing better.
Right.
Some people, you don't have the ability to work out, but I'm like, I'm young, I'm healthy, I can do better.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning of February, I knew what I needed. And I knew that I needed small group boot camp. Like I needed people that were on me, because I am that. Okay, let me just preface, actually, let me run this back, because I think that it's important for you guys to know who I am. I hate working out. Like I hate anything physical. I wish I can get in contact with all of my physical trainers over the years. My friends, no one likes working out with me because I'm a complainer. I'll be right back, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Those people, right? I need a water break. I'm that person. I'm that person. Like, Koree, stop. Like, you're always complaining. I mean, I've been in relationships with people that I cannot work out with them. Like, it practically has ruined like relationships that I've been in. Like, it's just not my thing. And so my thing has always been nutrition. Okay. Because I'm like, what? I will eat a salad for 6 months. Okay. If I need to, before I step foot in the gym. Okay. Like, that's me. My friends, they're the opposite. So they're like workout girls, but they'll be like, oh, well, we're going to go eat and we're going to work out, but we'll go to happy hour.
Yeah.
And so I was the only one that was the opposite, but I have to share that because this was never anything I enjoyed. I need people to know that I hated it. And so that's why it had always been so hard for me. And so now coming back to February, I just, like I said, I knew that I could do better. And so I knew that I needed a boot camp, and I knew that I needed it to be small group, because it couldn't be one-on-one, because that's too much pressure. Way too much pressure for me. Right. So I did some Google searches, and I'm like, okay, I need cost efficient. Like I need to find a place, because boot camps are expensive, especially in LA, right? Yeah. Fitness is a big deal and it's pricey. So I was like, okay, I need to find some place. And then of course, when you Google something on your computer, you start getting ads on Instagram, right? And so I started getting ads from this place called The Camp. the Camp Transformation Center, and they were doing the $69 detox special,
Yeah.
where they have, it's like an intro program that they have, and you can take advantage of all the classes, but you just pay $67 to give you a nutrition plan. So I'm like, okay, let me see what's up. And those are like almost like around the corner from my house. So I'm like, okay, it's $67. It's right around the corner. I have no excuse.
Yeah.
And so it was in February that I started that. And mind you, this is like from the couch to boot camp. Like I wasn't stretching. I wasn't like going for walks,
Right.
this is literally like from the couch to boot camp, and starting there changed my life. Yeah. And so they have what we've referred to in the beginning of our discussion today, the 6-week challenge. So when I had started this detox, there were a lot of people that were doing the challenge at the time, and I just love their enthusiasm. And I'm like, I'm gonna do the challenge. I'm gonna do the challenge. So the next challenge was March 1st, or February 28th was weigh-in, and I was like, okay, after I finish this detox, I'm gonna go right into it. And I have to tell you this quick story. So when I decided to do the challenge, I didn't have the money, but I was like, this is worth it. So let me run up the credit card real quick. So I ended up paying for it. And I remember getting in my car and being like, Koree, you're not going to do this. You might as well go back in there and get your money, because you're not really going to do this. There's no way you're going to do this. You hate this. Like, why'd you even pay?
Yeah.
And it's crazy, because I just drove home. I woke up the next day, hit a 6 a.m. class, and it changed my life. But it's just, I kid you not. I was just like, Koree, like, you're not going to do this. I don't even know why you'd waste your time, like, acting like you are. You put money down you don't have. Like, why are you trying to become better?
Right.
Why are you trying to be great?
Right. That's
And
good. Yeah.
I showed up that day, and every day
Right.
changed my life.
Yeah. And that's good. I mean, that goes Bible, right? Like, giving a daily yes is not just a spiritual thing, but it's also a thing in like natural practice. And I know for me, I'm bad with like, and I've told you before, like, okay, I'm on the 6-week challenge. So I have to go day by day. And I can't look at, okay, so this is what I'm going to do for 6 weeks, and I'm going to map out everything. Like, I literally wake up. I know that I go to the 8 a.m. class, and I eat after the class. I have to eat before 10. And then when I go into the office, I sit down and I put my alarms on my phone for when I need to eat. And then I also, in my notes, I track my water, because I'm not going to remember how much water I'm drinking. So I track my water, and that's my every morning. So it's like a daily thing for me, because I'm not good with planning or planning for the week or planning for a few days. The only thing that goes for a few days is I'll do the meal preps. Those will last me 3 or 4 days. But like, I wake up every day. Yes, I'm intentional. I'm saying yes to going to the gym today. Okay, boom. Now I wake up on a Friday, week 4, and it's like, okay, you've said yes 5 times each week to going to the gym. You say yes to all these meals, and you did it. And I'm better that way, and I see better results that way. But I'm like, I can't do what am I going to do? How is my life going to change in 6 weeks? Or how am I going to implement this in 6 weeks? When I start doing that, it's like, oh girl, no.
Oh yeah.
Like, I can't. But now I look back, I'm about to start week 5 on Monday. And it's like, yeah, the daily yeses got me to this point.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, just something to consider. Like, if the week plan, or if you're like, hey, like you were like, oh, you're not going to do this for 6 weeks, like whatever. It's like, well, if I can get up every day and be intentional about this and set the goal for that day and just conquer the day, then I'll wake up in week 6 and my days would have been conquered.
Absolutely.
So that's just like a note. That's what I've learned about myself.
Man, I have learned so much just on this fitness journey. And it really is just, we use working out as a punishment. Like,
Yeah.
And it really is, you work out because you love your body, not because you hate your body. You get to work out.
Yeah.
And so when I stopped focusing on getting skinny
Yeah,
or
I remember you
getting
saying
this
that.
perfect body, right? Like I want to look just like this. And I started focusing on just getting stronger, becoming a healthier version of me, a consistent version of me, a
Yeah.
more disciplined version of
Right.
me. It changed everything
Right.
because I showed up differently every day. Because if your focus is getting skinny, you know,
Right.
it's not sustainable because
Yeah,
you're
no.
not going to get skinny overnight.
Yeah.
But you can get stronger every
Mhm.
week. You
Yeah.
can you show up for yourself
Yeah.
every day, and you're like, wow, like it's been 5 days, and
Yeah.
I'm really doing this thing, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But there's just so much to learn, and just how faith and fitness are weaved together,
Yeah.
and the lessons is just like it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's the intention too. I think, and I started the challenge because Koree, and not even because Koree said something, like she was the one that introduced me, but I I've detailed my arthritis thing or story on here a few times, but started taking well, just a lot. Like I said, I went through chemotherapy. I think that had an effect on my body that I just wasn't ready for. Then I started taking medication that was like speeding up my metabolism, but I was eating the regular way that I was. I did notice me eating like larger portions. So like usually when I would go and eat this one meal at this restaurant, I would have something, to take home. And I'm like, nah, I ain't got nothing to take home. Like I ate the whole thing and the free bread and the salsa and chips. And I'm like, okay. So I realized that, but I didn't really eat crazy, but I was gaining weight like crazy. Like even on the trip, I did no meat for 30 days. I didn't drink, didn't really even eat out. And I'm thinking, oh, after 30 days, I'm about
You'll
to
be good,
see some
yeah.
weight drop. I gained weight. I was like 190. I'm normally 175, 180. And then when I came back from the trip, I think I was like tipping 200. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And especially when I travel, I always come back lighter.
Yeah, because we did so much walking.
Yeah,
and
so I was just like, I know I was telling her, I'm like, girl, I don't want to take no pictures. I'm like, girl, stand back. Like, I don't, because I just didn't like who I was seeing. So then after that, that was May. In August, I was in like a depression for like 2 days. Like, literally would go to the office and would go home and just get in bed. And was just like, I don't know who I'm looking at in the mirror. I'm working out every day. I'm drinking these doggone smoothies, and every time I step on the scale, I am heavier, and I'm working out 7 days a week. Drinking smoothies like 2 times a day. Really trying to just get this together. So I remember just looking at myself, and I was just like, nah, this ain't it. Like, this is not it. I need to do something. So I remember the camp. I remember calling them. I called them on a Tuesday. I was there on Wednesday. I was like, okay, what? So I took the classes. They were like, we got this challenge. I'm like, my body is really doing some weird things right now. So I don't even know how my body's going to respond to this. And I asked them like, hey, do you guys have experience with people that are taking medication and I can't get off the medication, but I need to lose this weight? And they were like, you know what? Yeah, like you should definitely try it. I'm like, yo, here's my card. Like, let's do it. So I did workouts for 2 weeks, and I didn't see weight loss then. But when I started doing the camp, I did. So, like I said, I'm at week 4. When I weighed in last week, I was down 10 pounds. So that was saying like it does. Oh, the
clap,
so it showed that it does, work even with me having that adverse like effect from the medication or whatever. But it's just been me looking at myself and going like, okay, if you want to keep this weight down, because you can go ahead and keep eating the way that you are eating and doing whatever you are doing and feeling bad, like, dang, I'm doing all of this good stuff for my body, but I'm still gaining weight. And I can feel bad for that and still gain the weight, or you can be more disciplined and get the results that you want.
Yeah.
And it's just a thing, like, sometimes things aren't fair. And I know us being in leadership positions, sometimes, especially in our faith, we might feel like it's not fair because we're held to a higher standard. And it's the same thing like with me and my body now, with me having this ailment and having to take the medication. I can't eat the way that I was eating before. Even the healthy ways that I thought that I was eating are not good for me. So now I found a way that is beneficial for me, to eat and for me to lose the weight. But it's like, you just have to be intentional and disciplined about it. So yeah, that's been like my journey with it. And like I said, that depression situation I went through was like literally. I've never been in that place where it's just like, oh no, I'm just gonna get in bed because I don't even want people to see me. You know, like that was just and I was like, girl, you got 2 days and you need to go do something. Like we need to figure something out. So I'm in that space. And then on the result side, like just seeing my body do things that it hasn't done in like literally 3 years.
Wow.
You know, like that's been, I posted like my box jumps and stuff. And on the other side of like Koree, I was an athlete. I played through college. Like I played basketball through college. So when the arthritis came and stuff, it was really tricky for me mentally going from having an able body that worked out 6 times a week, 3 hours in the gym to not being able to walk upstairs.
Yeah.
You know, so that was like a really tough thing for me. So it's been really good on my mental. This is probably the first time that I've been able to do group workouts because there was anxiety behind that. Because I needed accommodations when my arthritis was really bad. I couldn't get up and down from the ground. I couldn't lift things. So I just didn't do group workouts. And then trainers don't want to work out with you if you have ailments or if you have injuries. So it was a lot of anxiety around that. So being in a space where I'm like, okay, I can keep up. They modify the things and I can keep up. And then I'm also getting better. You know, my body is able to do things. It's just been really good for like my mental health. And then losing the weight too is like
the results.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm like, they ain't paying us or at all, but go check them out.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Right? I'm like,
yeah.
I show them so much love because they really have changed my
Mhm.
life for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also important. Thank you for sharing that. Like I love how you put a deadline on your depression though, because I'll be like, it's gonna disappear one day, and it's
Right.
like 3 months later, like, girl, no, it's time.
Right.
Jazz, like, you get 2 days,
Yeah.
and then we're about
have
that
to
action. We
keep
got to do
figuring it
something,
out. Yeah.
and I love that. I think that it's important for people to know and to understand that motivation doesn't just come. Like sometimes people get motivated. Maybe you watch a YouTube video and if you watch enough, you're like, yeah, I want to go to the gym because I want to look like that.
Yeah.
But for most people, we're waiting to be motivated to do something that we want for ourselves. But really, motivation happens after the action.
Yeah.
Like you take action, you get a reward for that action, and then you're motivated to take the action again.
Right.
You have to do something in order to be motivated to continue doing it.
Right.
And I feel a need to say that because I talk to so many people who are waiting to feel like working out.
Yeah.
You're never going to feel like working out.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that way. But the more you work out,
Yeah.
you will feel like working
Right.
out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just I think that it's really just important to take action because it just doesn't happen. And it makes me so sad when I talk to people because it's almost like if I wake up at 4 a.m. or you're going to the gym every day, it's almost like this misconception, or I guess a lot of people would think like, oh, they enjoy that, they love doing that. Like, no, we don't. We have to do it because we
Right.
know that we'll get the results that we're
Yeah,
looking
for
for.
sure.
So I'm going to keep showing up until I get there and then beyond because now it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But no, people don't want to wake up
Yeah.
at 4 a.m. and go off of 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah, no.
It's just, but it's
Right.
what they do
Yeah.
because they want the reward.
And I want to even on like tying that into the faith side, because a lot of conversations that I've been having, you'll have people who will be stuck in situations and they'll be like, oh, I'm praying for there to be like an easy way out of this. Or I'm praying for my emotions to be in a good space so that I can dip out of this smoothly. And my thing is always like, I feel like sometimes people use that the way you're saying, like, oh, I'm waiting to be motivated. Like, I'm waiting for God to change my emotions as like a scapegoat, or I'm praying about it as a scapegoat. And it's like, okay, you're sitting on your knees, and when are you going to get up and go to therapy about it?
Yeah.
Or when are you going to get up and say like, oh no, I'm going to take myself out of this situation? Because God is not going to fix your emotions while you're in it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like you're not going to lose the weight while you're sitting at home. You know, so
Listen.
it's like, I think sometimes just on that side, I've been having a lot of conversations about that. Like, okay, you shouldn't be in this. I hear that you're saying you're praying about it, and that's good, but you also need to get up and leave.
It's so real. And I love that you said that because it's so true. Like, I don't know exactly what scripture it is, but it says, man plans his ways, but God directs his
Yeah.
steps, right? And but you have to step for
Yeah.
God to direct your steps. And that's what people don't realize. Like, you have to do something, even if it's the wrong direction. If you're walking in the direction, God will redirect you. But he's not going to direct you in a place if you're not moving.
Yeah.
It's just not how
all
it
you're doing
works.
is talking to him about it, and he's like, okay, you gotta move.
Yeah.
You have to do something. And I think sometimes we become so dependent on, like, and I don't want to say God, because you are supposed to be dependent on God, but we become so dependent on how we think God moves that we really miss his actual move or what he's actually saying. And God is not like I'm going to control you, God. So it's not like, oh, you don't want to be in this relationship, I'm going to take you out. Like, or you shouldn't be in this, I'm going to just remove you. He's like, no, you wanted to lay down with this man. Now you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You got to go through the hurt and the pain. He's like, I will be here for you and I will comfort you, but don't think that I'm going to not, just remove you. Like, you decided to do this and you shouldn't have been in this relationship.
You got to get yourself out.
Yeah. Or, just, it's a lot of different things, but it goes into that, like, people are waiting to get motivated. And it's like, you have to just get up and say yes.
Yeah, you really do.
And then also to what you were saying, like, there's a delayed gratification with a lot of things. And you'll go, for a week, or you'll do things for a week and you won't see the results that you want to see. But you have to keep going. And I think a lot of people get discouraged. Like, we're talking about this 6-week challenge, but they'll get discouraged in the first 1 or 2 weeks, right? And it's like, but you have 4 more to go.
Right.
Like, imagine what your results are going to look like at the end of those 4 more weeks that you have.
Right.
But you're sitting here expecting like 6-week results in week 1.
Right.
And you're upset now, or you're down on yourself because you don't see them.
Yeah. And it's a real lifestyle. Like, you have to work out for the rest of your life. Like, you should want to, right? And it's not to say, but it's not to say you have to go hard and hit and you have to be like heavy in calisthenics and doing all this crazy stuff. Like, but you need to be active for the rest of your life and making healthier choices for yourself, right? And I think that we forget that because we just want the results, and we forget you're building a lifestyle and you want it to be sustainable. That long-term motivation literally comes from seeing results. Yeah. That's what it is. That's the only thing that's going to keep you going. Yeah. I remember talking to my brother. He's a big time fitness guy. And he kind of saw my progress in the beginning, and I was like, well, something, because you have this goal, right? I'm gonna have this body, and he's like, if you get the body, you're never gonna stop. He's like, because you're gonna want to continue improving on that body. Yeah. Like, it's the results that keeps you motivated. You don't get motivated just off nothing. Right. It's that reward, like I said. But yeah, I mean, all of it can be. When I think of faith and fitness, it's just, they're so tied together in such a beautiful way. Because like you said, they're both like, you have to be intentional about them both. And it's a process with them both. You continue to mature in them both. It's like, if like my first 6-week challenge, like, to see how I operate in the gym now versus when I first got in the gym, completely different. Yeah. Like, you're learning form, their fundamentals, their basics, right? You're learning how to work the equipment. You're observing people. It's just very different. And then now, and I'm still considered a beginner, but like, I've grown tremendously. Yeah. And so, it's the same with the faith. It's like just learning the basics, understanding how to pray, understanding how to set time aside, like mapping out what's important to you about your relationship with God. And then over time, you see, like Jazz and I were talking about earlier, like, oh my God, I've changed. Or people will notice and you don't even realize how God's been transforming your life.
And you inspire people too. Mm-hmm. That's a thing too. I know with this, I mean, and we've talked about it. And I think with us, there are people that look at us, and not saying in a boastful way, but there are people who have their eyes on us and see. And we talked about social media, and I was like, girl, you need to start posting yourself and like your life because people are like looking, and I'm like, out of all the stuff that we see, all the mess on social media, right? To come across someone maybe, and some people, it may just be you. It may just be me that's living for God, right? That is
Yeah.
going to church or that is doing something positive. You know, we see so much. So it's like, that's why I'm like, yes, us as believers, we need to deposit our life and not like preaching on social media. Like, okay, of course,
Yeah.
post when you're teaching and preaching, but also just your life. Like, you know,
Yeah.
just how God is like moving in your life and give him credit for that, because we think about all the stories that I see. I have a lot of church people that I know and I follow and stuff and don't see it as often. So I know if you don't have the access that I have to church people and to faith-based people, you're just not seeing it. So I'm like, no, I want to be that. I want to be that light, or I want to be that Christian that you see like, okay, that's my one little scripture read for the day, or that's my one little like, you know, exposure to Jesus or faith. I'm like big on that. Like, you know, just showing that part, or just being open, like as a Christian.
Yeah, I love that, and you definitely an advocate for that. And
Yeah.
I'm learning. Like I've been trying to be more open on my social
Mhm.
media, because it is true. Like you need to see someone's lifestyle,
Yeah.
not just like, oh, I'm preaching. Oh, I'm preaching. Okay, cool. She preaches, but how is she living? What does this look like
Yeah.
practically in real life?
Yeah.
How does she have fun if she's not drunk? Like she's not having sex. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like it's important for people to know that it's possible,
Yeah.
and that it's not like a daunting thing, but you
Yeah.
can live in joy and in excitement, and,
Yeah.
and be happy with the lifestyle, instead
Yeah.
of like, oh great, long since I can't drink. Like, you know, it's yeah.
Because that's where you win people. You know, you don't necessarily win them in the pulpit.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I think, you know, you win over the backslider in the pulpit, right? You win over people
good,
like
actually.
us who know God, knew God growing up, and we were like, yeah, we always knew we were going to give him a yes. Now, all right, it seems like it's okay, right? But people that are unchurched, who don't know about God, right? Or like, and it's crazy to think that, because I've always been around people who know a form of God, but there are people who literally just,
They have no idea.
they don't have an idea, and they're not going to come up at altar call and say, I want to give my life to Jesus.
Yeah.
But they may see you at the gym
Yep.
and follow you and be like, wow,
Yep.
Koree always comes in here so happy. What
Yep.
is it?
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Or like you said, like if they're watching your social media,
Yeah.
they stumbled upon you and they don't even believe in God, but for some reason they'll listen to you.
Yeah.
And they're watching you, and you seem so joyful, and
Yeah.
you're not weird.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know, wow, she's actually seems like she's
Right.
cool, and she's
Yeah.
talking about this Jesus stuff. Oh, you know, maybe
Right.
I'll see what's up.
Yeah. So that,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a necessary thing, but it's good. And I'm like, the faith and fitness, it's intentional, and in the same way where you can lose both, right? If you're not actively working them.
Yes.
You know, that's what I was saying. You can lose both of them, or not lose them, but not be as strong in both of
You're
them.
literally building
Yeah.
muscle.
Yeah. So
Like,
and muscle memory, all of that. But
yes.
yeah, the faith part, it's something that you definitely have to work in, because there's so much going on in the world. You know, like I think there was a meme, and we're getting ready to close soon, but there was a meme, and it was like, there's not enough self-love in the world for me to abstain from sex like for a long period of time or something. And it was like me in my head, because one, they weren't bringing in the religious aspect. They were just saying like keeping themselves, you know, for whatever reason. But I was just like, but there's so much that you're keeping yourself from. And if you kept yourself for X amount of time, why would you just give that up for the sake of maybe 20 minutes? However long it would be. But why would you give that up for that small amount of time?
Yeah.
You know, and there's those of us, you know, church girls or whatever however you want to label us, those of us that are living for God and really keeping ourselves, where it's like there's no amount of time that I would want to give to forsake that.
Yeah.
Or even to taint the fact of me, like, you know, getting married and having that like with my husband or whatever. Like, of course, stuff has happened, but now it's like, yeah, I want to be a little more intentional with that. I don't want to waste it in a moment with a man that is not my husband. Yeah. And if he is going to be my husband, I hope he's also going to wait until we get married.
Right.
So.
And that comes with maturity, for sure. Like you had to get there, like I had to get here. But like you said, it is definitely an area that I think a lot of people should be more intentional about because they don't really understand the spiritual implications of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't really talk about it too much. And that goes back to when I first started the conversation today about my questions. It was like everyone don't have sex before marriage.
Yeah.
No one tells you why.
Yeah.
And I don't think we talk enough about why and what's happening spiritually between people. And that's why you have the culture that we live in. It's hypersexualized. And you have broken people dating broken people, having sex with broken people, and no one's getting healing, having kids, torn relationships, no family unit. I mean, there's a whole different conversation, but the spiritual implications are big.
Right.
But again, it takes time to get here. Like I said, faith and fitness is a process. So,
it's
a
process.
Pursuit
it
of
is.
both.
But I'm glad we're able to have this conversation.
Me
It's fast.
Me too. I know.
Really
I can't believe it's 5
Well,
o'clock.
Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram at #Koree, and that is actually spelled #out. So # KOREE. I am on YouTube. YouTube.com/Koree, KOREEYANCY. And yeah, once you follow me, well, yeah, you can find me on those platforms. And then Facebook, of course, same name. So, KOREE.
Yeah.
You can find me.
Yeah.
I would love to have you guys.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Jess.
Talking about, you gotta come back.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so this is our conversation on faith and fitness. Like I said, follow us on Instagram at New Black History Makers, and then visit the website newblackhistorymakers.com. And yeah, that's it. We'll be back next Friday at 3:30 p.m. back in the same spot, talking about some good stuff. All right, y'all.
All right, bye, everybody.
I don't have this thing queued up. It's always, y'all know. Sometimes I be honest. Sometimes I don't.
I'm excited for this holiday drip. You designed everything already?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next Friday.
Bye.
Without the power of God behind everything I do, I really am completely inadequate.
I'm helping the culture. These guys are part of us as well. These are guys of our cousin. I'm helping the culture. I'm pushing the culture forward in another way.
Hey, black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow